This is how you hang the W2 clock back up on the wall. If you are going to hang it back exactly where it was before, like if you just taken it down to paint the wall, then I would say leave the screw, if you can, the screw that it hangs from, just leave that in its spot there and paint around it. Or if you take it out, make sure you leave the hole there so you know where to put the screw back in. And it should be in there so the back of the screw head, I'll point to that here, the back of it should be about 1/4 inch out or 3/8 out from the wall. And then, and also, of course, if there's a second screw down near the bottom, leave that one, or leave the hole for that one as well. Or if there's the little nail hole, like I'd mentioned about before, then put something in that, put a little nail in that to make sure you know where that is, because then you can just pick the clock up later and set it up on that screw up there, and then make sure it locks down in place and is on there real tight on that screw. And the bottom one, you need to get it onto those at the same time and then lock it down into place. Or you put it on the top screw and put the nail in the bottom, if that's what it has on this clock. But if you're going to transport the clock to someplace else or hang it in a different place, then I'll just mention a few things about it. Now that keyhole in the back, where that upper screw is attached to the clock, is about 2 inches up from this shaft down here that the pendulum is hanging from. So it would be up a little bit above the pendulum hanging point, like right about there. And so if you measure from that point up to the top, then you know how much the clock will extend above the place where you hang it. And of course, if you measure it out to the tip of the pendulum, that's as far to the left as it extends. The edge of the pendulum here, of course, when it's swinging, this comes out further. But anyway, that's so you know how far the clock extends from the point where it's hanging. And I would strongly recommend to put that upper screw in a stud in the wall. Find a stud rather than using a sheetrock anchor. For a clock this size, I don't trust sheetrock anchors to be real reliable. And also, of course, if you need to put in a bottom screw, then I'll just put the camera back because I need to use both hands to explain how you get things in place. So you need to do some measuring then before you would remove any of the screws on the wall from where the clock was hanging before. Some things need to be measured. So you need to first of all measure the distance between the two screws. So I'm measuring from the top edge of the screw here to the top edge of the screw down to the bottom, and I've got 51 inches. Okay, so measure that distance exactly, or measure from the center point of the screw to the center of the other one, so you get an exact measurement. And then the other thing you need to do is using either a long level or another reliable level and a long straight edge. You need to measure a vertical line. Get this leveled up here. Let's see, oops. There we go. You get that edge leveled up, and then you measure down here the distance from that vertical line over to the lower screw. Get that exact measurement. So then when you go to hang the clock in the new place, you put that upper screw wherever you think it needs to be to have the clock hanging in the right height and so forth. And then do those measurements again. Measure a line straight down. If you can, mark it lightly with a pencil, that's really nice. And then measure straight to the left, whatever distance that is. And then, of course, the exact distance between the screws, so they're the exact correct distance apart. Then it should be all set for hanging the clock. So then when you do hang the clock back up, I'll just pick it up off the floor here. You find the spot up above here. I can feel it with my finger where this should hang on the screw. At the same time, you would put the bottom screw in place. You put this over the screw, find where it fits onto that screw so that at the same time, when you lock it down in place, see it's up like this, and then you lock it down, both the upper and the lower screw lock into place in the keyhole. Now I didn't have a screw put in place on my wall here in the shop. I just put that one down there for show, actually. But anyway, when you have that done with both screws in place and the clock locked down, then it can't slide on the wall like this, like it does here. If you have the little nail protruding out of the bottom of the clock, like I showed, then it's out about maybe 5/8 of an inch or something, and you have that little something covering the point of it so it doesn't scratch the wall. What you're going to do then is either do the same measurements that I showed you for placing that bottom screw. You can do that and put a tiny little hole, use a nail to put a little hole in for the nail. You can either do it that way, or you can also use the clock itself to show you where this bottom should be, so you can slide it into the right position. What I'm doing here is I'm going to activate the pendulum again. I took this weight down, just let it hang. Alright. Then you put the weight back on. Get the weight up. Put it over the pulley. Put the string on the pulley. Alright. Now I've got the weight hanging down so the clock has some power, or you may need to wind it up a little. Then you start the pendulum swinging. And then you watch, I'm going to move the camera close again. You watch the escapement legs to see if the clock is leveled the way it should be. As long as this weight out here at the tip has not been moved. In fact, before you take the clock, here's another thing to do. Before taking the clock down or moving it, you can use a pencil. Just use a pencil somewhere, maybe in the back. Put a little mark where that weight is hanging, where it's tied around on the pendulum shaft. So in case it does get moved off or slide down, it can be put back in its original spot. So if it's in its original spot, then you can watch these legs as the pendulum is swinging. And I will review this actually in a later video about how to balance and level the pendulum and adjust it. And you watch how far up these legs, how far up they lift from the outer surface of this wheel. Now you can see this one is lifting way up, maybe about 2 inches or so. This one is not as high, maybe about 1 inch. So then you know you need to move the bottom of the frame and moving it towards in the direction where that to the side of the clock where that lever was lifting up higher. So I moved it to the left because it was the lever on the left that was lifting up higher. So we'll just take a look again. It's maybe 1.5 inches. And this is about the same. So it's really close. So all I was doing is sliding this to the left a little bit. And you can just experiment, you know, slide it one way if you're not sure which way, and then check those levers, see if they're lifting equally. Now I slid it back to the right again, and you can see how that leg on the left is lifting way up. So I'll slide it back over about where it was. And now the 2 escapement legs lift up about an equal distance. And it's got a nice balanced pendulum and an even ticking. Then when you have that lower part in position where you want it to be, then you would remove whatever little like block of wood or like this or piece of cardboard from that nail that protrudes out the back. And you remove this, and then you just push the bottom of the clock into the wall, push that nail, it'll just push into the sheetrock. If it's a plaster wall, if it's something hard, you know, a harder surface for that nail to push through, you'll have to push on it enough to make a little mark in the wall, and then you can just slide this away, pull it out and slide it off to the side, and then use a drill with a tiny thin bit, drill it in where that mark is that you made. So you've got it pre-drilled, and then you can bring the bottom of the clock back into position and push that nail into that hole that you've drilled. So then at that point, the pendulum should be in balance. The weight is on, hanging down there, and then of course you can take the string off. Once you get the clock hung on the screws on the wall, you can remove this string.